Stranger Things Season 3 is now officially streaming on Netflix, and if you're like me, you've already watched all 8 episodes and are already craving more. Since it'll probably be sometime before we even get a Season 4, I have 10 movies that you can watch that will not only scratch that 1980s science fiction horror itch, but might actually help you better understand some of the show's inner workings and Easter eggs. Hello there, I'm Christian from 1 Minute Critic for Film Is Now. Since Stranger Things first hit Netflix back in 2016, it's captured the imagination of millions of viewers and transported them back into the 1980s in ways that no other TV series has ever done before. And if you grew up in the 1980s like I did, the show almost serves as a trip down memory lane, while at the same time referencing and even mimicking some of the iconic films from that decade. And now that Season 3 is behind us, I wanted to share 10 movies that are referenced, have similar themes, aesthetics, and stories as the popular Netflix original series. And if you didn't grow up in the 80s or are not familiar with these films, you might actually end up getting a little more out of Stranger Things on your second watch through. Now before we dive in, I'd love to hear your thoughts or see what movies you think Stranger Things fans would also enjoy watching while they wait for Season 4. So go ahead and share those in the comments down below and let's discuss. And to try to keep this video from being over an hour long, I'm only going to give a few points for each movie and there's going to be some spoilers. So here we go. Now you might remember this hilarious and also pivotal moment in the Season 3 finale when Dustin and his long-distance girlfriend Susie sing an adorable duet with the theme song of The Neverending Story. Released in 1984, The Neverending Story follows a troubled boy named Bastian who reads a magical book that tells the story of a young warrior on a quest to stop an evil force called the Nothing from destroying his mystical world full of strange and magical creatures. The Nothing in this movie is in fact very similar to the purpose of Stranger Things' Mind Flayer in Seasons 2 and 3, as a looming evil presence that seems driven to cross over from the Upside Down and destroy everything and everyone in its path. The Neverending Story is a unique fantasy adventure that is a must-see for any Stranger Things fan. Released in 1986, Stand By Me is a short story written by Stephen King whose works have been one of the staple influences on Stranger Things since the beginning. Now Stand By Me is not a horror or science fiction, but rather a coming-of-age story about a group of 12-year-old boys that set out on a trek to look for a dead body. Stranger Things seems to borrow heavily from the Stand By Me boys' banter and from scenes of the gang hiking along railroad tracks. It's not your typical Stephen King tale, but it's one everyone should check out.
We'll float down here. Yes, we do.
Released as a miniseries first, and then more recently as a 2017 feature film, it is arguably Stephen King's masterpiece, and this movie couldn't be more similar to Stranger Things, even if you ignore the fact that Finn Wolfhard from the show is actually part of the It cast. Both Stranger Things and It deliver heavy doses of nostalgia. They're set in the 1980s, both have a band of friends facing off against a mysterious and evil force. In It, this force is a terrifying shape-shifting clown Pennywise who has an unsatisfiable hunger for children. There's so much about the 2017 movie that is similar to Stranger Things, one could almost argue that it's actually ripping off elements that made Stranger Things so popular, instead of the other way around.
Get your ass over here! Burn it!
Released in 1982, the sci-fi horror classic The Thing follows an American research team in Antarctica that's hunted by a shape-shifting alien that assumes the appearance of its victims. The Thing is known for its practical and visual effects and creature design, and it raised the bar and gave us one of the most disgusting and horrifying monsters ever on film, and it's pretty clear the Stranger Things creators took note. Both the Demogorgon and Season 3's fleshy and gooey Mind Flayer look an awful lot like The Thing. And in Season 3, Lucas directly references the movie when he compares New Coke to Carpenter's horror remake, saying that the original is great, but there's just something special about the new version. And if you didn't notice already, Mike has actually had a poster for this movie hanging in his basement since Season 1.
I'll be back.
The sci-fi thriller The Terminator comes from the mind of legendary filmmaker James Cameron. It hit theaters in 1984 and follows a young waitress who unexpectedly becomes the target of an indestructible cybernetic organism played by Arnold Schwarzenegger. Now, not only is this movie referenced directly multiple times in the Netflix series, you can see the Terminator being shown in theaters during Season 2, and an advertisement for the movie can be seen while Eleven is watching TV. Then in Season 3, one of the baddies is a massive Russian complete with a flat top haircut who moves stiff and robotic just like the Terminator. It's clearly meant to resemble Arnold Schwarzenegger in the original Terminator film. Even Stranger Things' iconic title sequence is a near recreation of the Terminator's opening credits. In the 1984 action thriller Red Dawn, the Soviet Union invades a small mountain town, forcing a group of high schoolers to pick up arms and fight back against the Soviets. Not only does this exact same thing happen in season 3 of Stranger Things, but one of the major action movie tropes of the 1980s was to designate Russians as the bad guys.
Ready? Ready? Get her!
In the 1984 comedy classic Ghostbusters, a group of former parapsychology professors set up a ghost removal service in the heart of New York City and are tasked with removing an evil presence unlike anything the city has ever seen before. In Stranger Things, not only is the movie directly referenced when the boys throw on their proton packs and dress up like the Ghostbusters in season 2, the show shares many Lovecraftian themes and has its fair amount of gooey slime. And like the Ghostbusters, the boys are forced to figure it out on their own with a little help from science, how to defeat the interdimensional foes. The 1982 horror classic Poltergeist comes from the brilliant mind of Steven Spielberg and Texas Chainsaw Massacre director Tobe Hooper. This movie is about a suburban family whose young daughter is abducted and taken to another plane of existence by evil spirits, and they're forced to use unconventional means to get her back. Stranger Things borrows heavily from Poltergeist's plot. It also takes place in a suburban setting, having a mother desperate to save her child from an unearthly dimension. They even use electronics to try to communicate with the other side, all the way down to the tentacled, slimy interdimensional gateways. In 1985, the coming-of-age adventure movie Goonies hit theaters and has since become a cultural phenomenon. Another Spielberg creation, the movie follows a group of neighborhood kids who stumble on a pirate map and are forced to overcome their fears and insecurities to find the treasure. Now, it's pretty obvious that Stranger Things built its foundation on this ensemble adventure, and the show borrows heavily from the Spielberg tropes found in this film, including childhood, family, adventure, friendships, and danger. And Stranger Things solidified their connection with this film by casting Goonies star Sean Astin in season 2. And like Stranger Things, this entire adventure takes place only a BMX bike ride away from home. And it's one of the most iconic 80s movies of all time. If Stephen King is the main inspiration for Stranger Things, Steven Spielberg's style of filmmaking is the blueprint. Spielberg's 1982 blockbuster E.T. the Extraterrestrial tells the story of a group of kids who befriend a marooned alien visitor, and while working to help him find his way home, they're pursued by a top-secret government agency. Sound familiar? Season 1 of Stranger Things is basically a carbon copy of E.T., but instead of finding an alien, this group of kids find 11. And it also hits a lot of the same plot points. A small-town adventure set in the 80s, a mysterious government agency, a secret friend with telekinetic powers, and a lot of bike riding. Even the scene in Stranger Things when Eleven flips the van is a direct homage to E.T. Now, of all the movies I've mentioned, E.T. probably shares the most similarities to Stranger Things, and I really don't see that as a problem. It is, after all, one of the most iconic and beloved movies to be released during all of the 1980s. Well, those are just 10 movies that I recommend you check out if you haven't already. Seeing these will only make you appreciate Stranger Things even more. Stranger Things brilliantly showcases everything that was great about the 1980s, and if you know these movies well enough, the show really starts to feel like a love letter to that decade. But what do you think? What movies do you think Stranger Things has pulled inspiration from? What's your favorite movie from the 1980s? I'd love to see your suggestions and thoughts, so go ahead and drop them in the comments below. If you like this video, don't forget to give it a big mind flare sized thumbs up and share it with all your friends. Once again, I'm Christian from 1 Minute Critic. Feel free to check out my channel where I do 1-minute movie reviews, ranking videos, and other movie related content. The link for that is in the description down below. Thank you so much for watching Film Is Now, and we'll see you next time.